They called me a useless ATM at the city's fanciest restaurant. One sentence from me silenced the entire table. The next morning, I discovered $60,000 of debt on credit cards I had never even seen. When they came knocking that Thursday, I finally chose myself. Only when we sat in the lawyer's conference room did they realize that dinner insult was really a summons for the final reckoning. My name is Olivia Long. I sat at the head of the long mahogany table at Harrod and Pike, a position that was not a privilege, but a target. The restaurant, anchored in the concrete and glass heart of Chicago's Gold Coast, was a fortress of quiet wealth. The air smelled of seared scallops and old money. A waiter, moving with the silent, fluid grace of someone who is paid to be invisible, tilted a heavy bottle of Bordeaux, the wine, a deep, almost black red, streamed into my father's glass. Its glugging sound was the opening bell, the familiar signal that the family toll was now due. I watched the liquid rise. It was a Saint-Emilion I hadn't ordered, but one I would inevitably pay for. Everything on this table, the starched white linen that felt like cardstock, the heavy, archaic silverware, the single, perfect orchid suspended in glass vases I would pay for. At the opposite end, my father, Gregory Mallory, a man of 60 who wore his entitlement like a bespoke suit, swirled the wine. He didn't just look at it, he appraised it, as if confirming its worthiness to be in his presence. "Livy," he said, his voice a boardroom boom that cut through the restaurant's expensive hush. He never used my full name unless he was about to sign a deal. And in this family, I was the deal. Market's looking volatile. What's the word on your end? Are the projections holding? I am a senior analyst at Kestrel Ridge Analytics. My job is to find patterns in chaos, to predict the unpredictable. My father believed my job was to fund his. He wasn't asking about the Dow Jones. He was asking about my bonus. He was asking about his transfer limit. The data is stable. Gregory, I replied, my voice flat. I always called him Gregory in my head. Saying Dad felt like a lie, a concession to a warmth that never existed. Beside him, my mother, Vivian, offered a small, sympathetic smile. It was a practiced expression, honed over 58 years of country club diplomacy. Darling, don't bother Olivia with work. We're here to celebrate. Celebrate what? It was always a celebration of Tuesday, a celebration of Paige's new haircut, a celebration that required my presence and my American Express. Tonight, the alleged occasion was my sister's engagement, Vivian's diamond tennis bracelet, a 4-carat circle of ice I'd funded as a spontaneous 50th birthday gift, flashed under the pinpoint spotlight as she reached for her water goblet. Her smile was a perfect calculating curve of coral lipstick. My sister, Paige, took the cue. "Oh, Livy, you just have to see the new mock-ups. Bennett and I finally found the one." She shoved her phone across the table, nearly upsetting a bread plate. On the screen was a villa, not just a house, but a sprawling, 16th-century Italian estate with cypress trees and a gravel drive that looked like it crunched with the bones of ancient aristocrats. "It's in Tuscany," she breathed, as if announcing a miracle. The coordinator said, "We're the first American wedding they've allowed in the main hall since 1998. Her fiancé, Bennett Cross, sat beside her, nodding. He was a man with a soft jawline, an expensive haircut, and the placid, unbothered expression of someone who was born to spend money he had not earned. He just radiated absorption, a black hole for other people's resources. He reached over and squeezed Paige's hand, his eyes on me. It's what she deserves. On my left, my brother Caleb sat in rigid silence. His knuckles were white as he gripped the hand of his wife, Marina. They were the quiet ones, the pair who always looked like they had wandered into the wrong play. Marina met my gaze for half a second, her eyes wide with a familiar, anxious empathy. She knew what was coming. Caleb just stared at his plate, as if he could will himself invisible by studying the seared pattern on his filet mignon. He understood the family mechanism better than anyone, which is precisely why he was terrified to speak. Vivian waited for the waiter to retreat. for the perfect lull in the conversation. She placed her linen napkin delicately in her lap, a general preparing for the final, decisive maneuver. "Well, that's just it, darling," she said, her voice dripping with casual sweetness, aimed directly at me. "These old European places are so particular. They require the full deposit to hold the date. It's just a formality." Of course. I felt the air in my lungs tighten. This was it. The reason for the Bordeaux, the scallops, the fawning over my analytical brilliance. They need the wire transfer by Friday to lock in next June. Vivian continued, breezing past the number as if it were pocket change. "It's only $15,000. We figured you could handle the deposit, just to secure the day. We'll send you the wire information in the morning. Not, can you, but you can. Not will you, but we'll send the info." An order wrapped in silk. The table went quiet. Not the anxious silence of Caleb, but the expectant, heavy silence of predators waiting for the designated prey to bleed. Gregory examined his cuticle. Paige vibrated with excitement. Bennett looked at me with a faint, smug smile. I took a deep breath. The air felt thin, metallic. I had been practicing this in my apartment, staring into the bathroom mirror, my stomach churning. I had a script. I had a number in a high-yield savings account that represented my escape. No. The word was small, but it landed on the table with the force of a slammed door. Paige's smile twitched, then vanished. "What, Livy? Don't joke. The coordinator is on a 3-hour time difference. I'm not joking." "Paige," I said, looking not at her, but at my mother. "I can't. I'm building my emergency fund." The atmosphere didn't just chill. It flash froze. The silence that followed was a physical thing, sharp and brittle, like a sheet of ice cracking. Bennett's smile dropped. Vivian's face tightened, the coral lipstick pulling into a thin, bloodless line. Gregory was the one to break it. He let out a short, barking laugh that was pure contempt. It was a sound I had heard my entire life, usually directed at waiters, valets, or anyone he considered beneath him. Now, it was directed at me. He leaned forward, his expensive suit jacket bunching at his shoulders. His eyes, the same blue as mine, were cold with a rage that was always simmering just below the surface. "An emergency fund," he scoffed, his voice loud enough for the neighboring tables to pause their conversations. "And what, exactly, is the emergency? A broken nail?" The small circle of sycophants at the table, Paige, Bennett, even Vivian, let out the requisite titter of laughter. A loyal chorus. "How does it feel?" "Olivia," Gregory spat, his voice dropping into a low, vicious snarl. "How does it feel to be a useless ATM?" Useless ATM, the words hung in the air, illuminated by the soft, expensive lighting. It wasn't a question, it was a verdict, a pronouncement of my failure to perform my sole function. A memory, so sharp it stole my breath, slammed into me. I was 19, home from my sophomore year at Northwestern, the scholarship letters and dean's list certificates clutched in my hand. Gregory had been sitting at this very table, or one just like it, smoking a cigar that cost more than my textbooks. I had been babbling about internships, about my future. He had laughed that same bark of a laugh, put a heavy hand on my shoulder, and said to a room full of his golfing buddies, "This one, Olivia. She's not my daughter. She's my retirement plan." The room had laughed then, too, and I, desperate for his approval, had smiled. The label, branded onto my skin. My destiny set. I was not a person. I was a 401k. The memory snapped, and I was back at Harrod Pike. The buzzing in my ears stopped. The panic I had felt just moments before evaporated, replaced by a profound, Arctic calm. I looked at Gregory, the man who had called me his retirement plan, the man who now called me useless because the vault was, for the first time, closed. I slowly placed my fork and knife on the edge of my plate. The porcelain chimed, a clear, high note in the heavy silence. I smiled. It was not my mother's practiced, polite smile. It was a new smile, all teeth and ice. "If I'm a useless ATM," I said, my voice perfectly level, Then I guess I'm shutting down operations. Effective immediately. Before anyone could react, I pulled out my phone, my fingers, steady and sure, moved across the screen. Gregory's face began to contort, a slow-motion realization dawning. "What are you doing?" Vivian hissed, the polite facade crumbling. "I'm just checking my emergency fund," I said. I opened my banking app. I found the recurring payment, $4,000, labeled Mallory Mortgage, scheduled for the 1st of the month. I hit cancel. Then I hit delete recurring payment. "Livy, don't be dramatic." Page whined. "Oh, I'm not being dramatic. I'm being analytical." I swiped to my Venmo app. I saw Gregory's name, Vivian's, Page's, block, block, block. I did the same on Zelle. The digital umbilical cords, severed in less than 10 seconds. "You ungrateful?" Gregory began, his voice rising, his face turning a deep, alarming shade of claret. He started to rise from his chair, his napkin falling to the floor. "Sit down," I said. It wasn't a request. I took my corporate card, the one with my name, Olivia Long, on it, not Mallory, from my wallet, and tossed it onto the table. It skidded across the linen and stopped next to the orchid. "That covers my meal and my wine. The rest of this." I gestured to the table, to the half-eaten plates, the bottle of Bordeaux. "The entire fiction of their lives is your problem." I stood up. My chair scraped against the marble floor, a sound like a muted scream. Gregory was on his feet now, his fists clenched, his expensive suit-wearer's composure utterly gone. "You can't," he stammered, sputtering. I can," I said, my voice ringing with a clarity I had never known I possessed. "I paid my own tuition. Gregory, I paid for my own apartment, and for the last 7 years, I have paid for your golf memberships, your cars, and your entire luxury life." I looked at Paige. "I'm not paying for your 16th century fantasy." I slung my purse over my shoulder. "It's over." I turned and walked away. I did not run. I walked. My heels, sharp and decisive, clicked on the polished marble floor. Each click was a punctuation mark, a full stop, the sound of a chain breaking, the sound of freedom, echoing in the suddenly utterly silent room. The other diners were staring, their faces a blur of curiosity and disapproval. I didn't care. As I reached the grand arched doorway, I felt a gaze. I paused for a fraction of a second, my peripheral vision catching a figure at a small table near the bar. My Aunt Iris, Vivian's older sister, the family pariah, the one who had never lived up to her potential and was, not coincidentally, the only one not on my payroll. She was alone, nursing a glass of white wine. She wasn't looking at me with shock or pity. Her gaze was sharp, focused, and analytical. She watched the scene at the table, her head slightly tilted, as if she were committing every detail to memory, as if she were recording it. Then her eyes met mine, and she gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. I pushed through the heavy glass doors and stepped out into the cold, clean Chicago night. The wind off the lake hit me, but I didn't feel it. I felt light. I felt new. I felt my phone vibrating in my pocket, a furious, insistent buzzing. It felt like a trapped hornet. Text messages. I knew. Voicemails. The digital barrage of the family apocalypse. I walked to the corner, hailed a cab, and let the phone ring, and ring, and ring. I did not answer. The cab door slammed shut, a period on the first sentence of my new life. The ride back to my Streeterville apartment was a blur of neon and concrete, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement like scattered, broken jewels. My phone, still in my pocket, had finally stopped its hysterical buzzing and now vibrated with the sullen, rhythmic throb of incoming texts. Each one felt like a small, sharp pebble hitting a window. I didn't look at it until I was inside my apartment, the door locked, the deadbolt thrown, the silence of my space, a space I had paid for, a space that was mine, was a balm. I kicked off my heels, the ones Gregory always said looked too aggressive, and walked on the cool hardwood floor to my kitchen. I poured a tall glass of water, and only then, with the glass cold against my hand, Did I look at the phone? The lock screen was a digital crime scene. 22 missed calls, 47 text messages. From Vivian. You have given me a panic attack. I am calling Dr. Miller. From Vivian. I cannot believe your selfishness. After everything we have given you. From Vivian. Paige is in tears. You have ruined her wedding. You have ruined this family. From Vivian. Gregory is beside himself. You are killing your mother. Call me now. From Paige. I don't understand what I did to you. You're destroying my one perfect day. From Paige. That deposit is lost. The villa is gone. Are you happy? From Paige. Bennett says he's never seen such a cold-hearted betrayal. He's right. From Gregory. Call your mother. You have 5 minutes. From Gregory. Turn your phone on. From Gregory. You will regret this. Olivia. This is not over. The messages hit me like a hailstorm, each one a perfectly formed pellet of guilt, shame, and accusation. They were designed to break me, to send me scrambling back, checkbook in hand, full of apologies and cash. I read them, one by one, and felt the old, familiar churning in my stomach, the acidic spike of anxiety, the impulse to fix it, to smooth the waters, to pay the toll. Then, a new message popped up, separating the barrage. It was from a number I rarely saw. Caleb. It contained only 6 words. Are you okay? I support you. I stared at the text. I read it 3 times. A single, thin, but unexpectedly strong thread in the suffocating tapestry of obligation. I leaned against my kitchen counter, the granite biting into my back, and took my first real breath since I'd said no. Caleb. He had never defied them, but he had never taken the money, either. He and Marina lived in a tiny walk-up in Pilsen, paying their own rent, driving a 10-year-old car. He was the quiet dissenter, and he supported me. It was the first pillar, the first piece of solid ground. I set the phone face down. I finished my water. I slept for 3 hours, a fractured, dreamless sleep, and woke up at 4:30 in the morning. My mind preternaturally clear. The adrenaline had worn off, and in its place was a sharp, cold focus. The analyst in me was taking over. The system had been shocked. Now it was time to assess the damage and rebuild. At 6 a.m., I sent an email to my boss at Kestrel Ridge Analytics, citing a sudden personal emergency, and took a sick day. I looked into my closet, a sea of navy blazers, gray sheath dresses, and beige silk blouses, my uniform, the armor of the competent, reliable, always available Olivia Long. The sufferer's uniform, I thought. I pushed it all aside and pulled out a pair of old jeans and a soft, worn cashmere sweater, the color of oatmeal, the color of comfort. I was cutting the link, shedding the skin of the person who got hit, and said thank you. By 9 a.m., I was in the sterile beige and gray offices of my financial advisor, Ruth Danvers. Ruth was in her late 50s, with short, spiky gray hair and a gaze that could penetrate steel. She was a numbers first, bullshit last kind of woman. I had hired her 6 months ago when the first inkling of my emergency fund plan had begun to form. You look terrible, Olivia, she said, not as an insult, but as a statement of fact. She slid a box of tissues across her desk. I feel clear, I said, which was the truth. Ruth, I need a full audit. I need to see every transfer I've made to my family for the last 5 years. Everything. Ruth's eyebrows shot up, but she didn't ask questions. She just turned to her dual monitor setup, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Let's pull the records. We tagged most of the big ones when we set up your new accounts. But let's dig deep. For an hour, we dug. We sorted by recipient. Gregory Mallory, Vivian Mallory, Paige Mallory. We sorted by memo, mortgage help, Paige's car, membership dues, Italy deposit. We pulled records from my checking, my savings, my old money market account. Ruth built a spreadsheet with every new line item. The silence in the room grew heavier. The numbers piled up, row after row, a digital ledger of my own systematic bleeding. It wasn't just the dinners, though there were thousands of dollars in restaurant charges. It wasn't just the gifts, the bags from Neiman Marcus, the watches, the bracelet. It was the down payment on their West Briar condo, the $6,000 property tax bill that turned out to be for a pair of custom-made suits for Gregory, the medical emergency for Vivian that was actually a weekend at a spa in Scottsdale. When Ruth finally hit the sum function at the bottom of the column, the number that appeared on the screen made the air leave my lungs. $350,000 in 5 years. Jesus, Ruth whispered, leaning back in her chair. Olivia, this isn't helping your family. This is a systematic extraction. A blood-draining model. A retirement plan. I stared at the number. The red, glaring, 6-figure sum. And I felt sick. There's more, I said, my voice sounding distant. Last night, Gregory called me a useless ATM. I think there's more. Ruth's face was grim. She clicked a different tab on her browser. I ran your credit when we first met. It was $780. Let's run it again, right now. She typed in my social security number, a number I knew Vivian had memorized for emergencies when I was a teenager. The wheel on the screen spun, and then the report loaded. Ruth just stared at the screen. Oh, no. What? I asked, my heart hammering. Your score is 640. Olivia, your debt-to-income ratio is through the roof. What? That's impossible. I have no debt except my condo, and my utilization is under 10%. I check it every month. Not according to Experian, Ruth said. Turning the monitor toward me, my eyes scanned the page, and there they were. Capital One Platinum balance, $15,000. Chase Sapphire. Preferred balance, $23,000. A personal loan from a local Chicago credit union balance, $22,000. I had never seen these accounts. I had never heard of the credit union. Ruth, I whispered, I didn't open these. I never applied for these. When were they opened? Ruth was already clicking, her face a mask of cold fury. 2 years ago, all within 3 weeks of each other, and the mailing address on all 3. She didn't need to finish. My parents' house, I said. The West Briar address. $60,000. A wave of dizziness, sharp and violent, washed over me. I gripped the arms of the chair. $60,000 of debt, taken out in my name. The useless part of Gregory's insult suddenly made a new, horrifying kind of sense. Had the accounts been maxed out? Had I been shut down? This was no longer about family obligation. This wasn't helping. This was a crime. This was identity theft. And in that moment, in that sterile office with the bad beige art on the walls, a strange, terrifying calm settled over me. The suspicion I had carried for years, the vague, gnawing feeling that I was being hollowed out, that something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. It was all true. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't ungrateful. I was a victim, and I had a spreadsheet to prove it. Okay, I said. My voice was steady. The fog was gone. Okay, what do we do first? For the next 2 hours, Ruth's office became a war room. We called all 3 credit card companies and the credit union. I used the word fraud. I used the word stolen. I filed the official fraud claim on each account. I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. I wrote down every reference number, every claim number, the name of every agent I spoke to. My entire call and text history, the years of messages from Vivian and Gregory and Paige. Livy, need to cover the club dues this month. Darling, the car made a funny noise, taking it to the dealer. Just need a little help, honey. They weren't just annoyances anymore. They were evidence. They were a pattern of behavior. I paid Ruth for her time and walked out into the afternoon sunlight, blinking like someone emerging from a cave. I felt violated, but I also felt powerful. The amorphous, emotional burden of family had just crystallized into a hard, factual, legal problem, and legal problems had solutions. I was halfway home when my phone buzzed with a call from my apartment's front desk. Ms. Long. It was Miguel, the daytime doorman. There's a Mr. Gregory Mallory here to see you. He says it's an emergency. My blood ran cold. He is not to come up. Miguel, under any circumstances. Yes, ma'am. He's quite insistent. He's yelling. I understand. Thank you. Miguel, do not let him up. If he refuses to leave, please call the police. I hung up and ran the last block. When I got to my building, the lobby was empty, save for Miguel, who looked shaken. He left, Ms. Long. He was very angry. He called you some terrible names. I'm so sorry. You did the right thing. Miguel, thank you. When I got to my apartment, I saw it, a piece of stationery, the thick, cream-colored kind Vivian favored, with Mallory embossed at the top, had been shoved roughly under my door. It wasn't a letter. It was a single, furious scrawl in Gregory's jagged handwriting. You owe us. Fix this. I picked up the paper. It felt heavy in my hand. I didn't rip it up. I didn't cry. I walked over to my desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a fresh manila folder. In my sharpest, most analytical handwriting, I wrote one word on the tab. Evidence. I placed Gregory's note inside. My emotions were shutting down. The part of me that was a daughter, a sister, that part was going quiet. The analyst, the logician, the part of me that lived for data and consequences, was taking the wheel. I sat at my desk, the evidence folder staring back at me. I picked up my phone. I didn't call my friends. I didn't call Caleb. I scrolled to a number I paid for every month, a number I had used often in the last 2 years. Dr. Naomi Adler, my therapist. She picked up on the second ring. Olivia. Naomi, I said, my voice a dead flat monotone. I need a referral. I need a lawyer, not a family lawyer. I need a shark. I need the most relentless, take no prisoners financial crimes attorney you know. Dr. Adler's referral was not to a law firm in a glass tower. It was to a name, Cole Whitaker. His office was on LaSalle Street, in an old, imposing building with a lobby that smelled of brass polish and a century of transactions. The elevator was a cage, a slow-moving box of iron and wood, and it deposited me on a floor where the only name on the frosted glass was his. The office inside was a controlled explosion of paper. There were no sleek, modern desks or abstract art. There were files, thousands of them. Stacks of bankers' boxes lined the walls, filled with expanding folders so thick they had to be bound with heavy-duty rubber bands. His desk was a fortress, and he sat behind it, not in shadow, but in the harsh glare of a single, angled desk lamp. Cole Whitaker didn't stand up. He was a man in his 50s, with a face that looked carved from granite and an intensely worn, but perfectly tailored, suit. He just looked at me as I entered, his eyes a cold, neutral gray. They were the eyes of a man who had seen every possible version of human betrayal and was impressed by none of them. Ms. Long, Dr. Adler called, he said. His voice was like gravel in a blender. Sit. I didn't offer a preamble. I didn't cry. The emotional part of me was offline. I was an analyst bringing data. I placed the manila folder, now labeled Evidence, on his desk. He opened it. He pulled out Gregory's note. You owe us. Fix this. He looked at it for a long second. Then he looked at the spreadsheet from Ruth, his eyes scanning the $350,000 total. He nodded, as if confirming a calculation. Then he picked up the credit report showing $60,000 in fraudulent debt. The family retirement plan, he said, his voice flat. I see a dozen of these a year. This one, he tapped the credit report, is ambitious, but sloppy. I need that $60,000 off my report, I said. My voice was as steady as his. Ruth Danvers said the credit bureaus won't do anything without proof. They won't, Cole said, leaning back. His chair let out a loud groan. The agencies are data processors, not detectives. A fraud alert is a band-aid. To surgically remove these debts, to make them vanish as if they never existed, we need something they cannot ignore. We need a weapon. What weapon? A police report. An official, filed and stamped, Chicago Police Department case number for identity theft. Once we have that number, you are no longer a dispute. You are a victim of a documented felony. They are legally required to clear your name. The entire game changes. A police report. Against them. The words felt heavy, foreign. They already filed a report against you, Cole countered, his gaze sharp as a knife point. They just filed it with a credit bureau, in the form of a fraudulent application. It's time to file yours. He leaned forward, steepling his fingers. The chaos of his office faded, and his focus became a pinpoint. So, here is the plan. It is a 3-step operation. It is mechanical. It is not emotional. First, we go to the 18th District. We file a comprehensive report for identity theft. I will go with you. We will not be shuffled off to some online form. We will get a detective's name and a case number by the end of the day. Second, we take that case number and we go to war. We send certified letters, return receipt requested, to the legal departments of all 3 credit bureaus and every single lender. We don't request. We inform. We inform them of an active felony investigation. We lock down your credit so tight you'll need a court order to buy a pack of gum. You already did the freeze. This makes it permanent. And third, I asked. Third is the conditional negotiation. Cole said, your parents did this. We know it. They know it. The moment that police report is filed, they are no longer just bad parents. They are felons. That's our leverage. Our goal is not jail. He paused. Unless you tell me it is. I just want it to stop, I said, the first crack in my voice. I want my name back. I want to be free. Good, he nodded. Jail is a mess. Restitution is clean. Step 3 is we use the threat of prosecution to force a settlement. They pay back the $60,000. They sign a binding legal document agreeing to cease all contact. In exchange, we inform the DA that restitution has been made, and we prefer not to pursue charges. It's a clean kill. The next 48 hours were a descent into digital forensics. Cole's office put in a request for the IP addresses associated with the online credit applications. The answer came back in hours. One IP address, Cole said, reading the email over the phone. Comcast Business, registered to Gregory Mallory, West Briar. They're not just sloppy, they're arrogant. I became an archaeologist of my own life. I downloaded every voicemail from Vivian, the weeping. Livy, I need a small procedure. The insurance is being so difficult. It's only $5,000. The manipulation. Your father is so stressed. A small loan would tide us over. I requested the security footage from Miguel, my doorman. He emailed the MP4 file without a word. I watched it, my stomach tight. There was Gregory, his face a mask of purple rage, yelling at the desk. There he was, shoving the embossed stationery under my door. I saved the file. Lobby footage, MP4. I was saving a voicemail as an audio file when my new, clean phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Olivia. The voice was dry, smoky, and instantly recognizable. Aunt Iris. I was at Harrod and Pike, she said, wasting no time. At the bar, I saw your exit. It was, she chuckled, a sound like dry leaves. It was spectacular, like watching a building that's been scheduled for demolition finally implode. Iris, I'm calling for a reason. Olivia, I'm not on your mother's Christmas list, as you know. About 4 years ago, I was at their house for one of Vivian's god-awful Easter brunches. She was on the phone in the kitchen, trying to get Paige a new car. Paige's credit was, and I quote, a dumpster fire. I heard Vivian. She was exasperated. Iris took a drag of what was clearly a cigarette. She said, Oh, for heaven's sake. Just put it in Olivia's name. She won't mind. She pays for everything. And then, Olivia. Right there in front of me. She opened a little black notebook she keeps in her desk drawer and she read your social security number into the phone. The air left my body. The room tilted. She read my... I've been waiting for you to find out, Iris said, her voice turning hard. I'm not stupid. I'm just poor. And in this family, that's the same thing. I knew what I heard. I'm willing to sign a formal affidavit, under oath, stating that I witnessed your mother, Vivian Mallory, in possession of and actively using your social security number to secure credit for your sister. Why? I whispered. Why are you doing this? Because, Iris said, and her voice was heavy with a lifetime of resentment. It's time to break this goddamn cycle. My sister is a black hole. It's about time someone plugged it. Send your lawyer my number. The line clicked. I called Cole. I was shaking. I have a witness. When I told him what Iris said, there was a long, profound silence on the line. Well, Cole finally said, and I could almost hear a grim smile in his voice. This just went from a negotiation to a public execution. I'm not just calling the CPD. I'm scheduling a preliminary meeting with the district attorney's office. We're going to pre-file this with the Economic Crimes Division. While Cole sharpened the legal guillotine, I rebuilt my life. I walked into a Verizon store and paid cash for a new phone and a new number. I only gave it to Cole, Ruth, Caleb, and Dr. Adler. I created a new, encrypted email address. I went through every single one of my accounts, bank, brokerage, 401k, even my airline miles, and changed the passwords to 32-character strings of random code. I enabled two-factor authentication on every platform. My digital life became a fortress. My next session with Naomi was difficult. I feel like I'm building a bunker, I told her, my hands gripping a hot cup of tea. But I'm terrified of what happens when they get through, when they find me. They will, Naomi said, her voice a calm anchor. And when they do, you will implement the gray rock strategy. You are a gray rock. You are dull. You are unresponsive. You are boring. What does that mean? They feed on your reaction, she explained. Your anger, your guilt, your defense that is their fuel. You will give them nothing. One-word answers. I see. No, I can't. You will not justify. You will not explain. You will not argue. You are a rock. They can't get blood from a rock. You will end the conversation. You are in control. I was practicing being a rock when a text came through to my new phone. It was Caleb. Caleb Liv. I'm at Mom and Dad's. I think I found something. I'm so sorry. A second later, a screenshot appeared. It was from the Mallory family group chat, a chat I had left years ago. The text was from Vivian, dated 2 months back. Vivian. My heart palpitations are acting up. I think I'll need to go to the clinic in Winnetka, the one that doesn't take insurance. Olivia will have to cover it. Paige's reply. Again, does that one still work? Gregory's reply. It always works. I'll call her during her workday. She cracks faster when she's stressed. I stared at the image, the scripting, the conspiracy, the casual, like cruel way they planned their attacks. She cracks faster. I saved the image. I forwarded it to Cole. His reply was instant. That's conspiracy to defraud. It's beautiful. I went back to my desk. The manila folder was too small. I moved all the documents, the bank statements, the IP logs, the affidavit from Iris, the lobby footage, the text message screenshots to a thick, black accordion file. It was 3 fingers thick. Cole called that afternoon. We're set, he said. We have the witness. We have the digital trail. We have the video. We have the conspiracy. The DA is very, very interested. It's time to set the meeting. What do I do? I asked. You do not call them. You do not talk to them. You will send one, and only one, email. From your new, secure account. It will contain the time, the date, and the place. Nothing else. Do not explain. Do not apologize. Do not engage. Be the rock. My hands were steady on the keyboard. To Gregory Mallory. Vivian Mallory. Subject meeting. A meeting has been scheduled for 10 a.m. on Thursday, November 6th. The meeting will be held at the offices of Whitaker Law, 401 South LaSalle Street, Suite 800. Be prompt. This is the only communication you will receive on this matter. I clicked send. I expected a firestorm. I expected calls to my office, emails to my old address, but the only reply came an hour later, to the new, secure email. It was from Vivian. Subject remeeting. Darling, that sounds so dreadfully formal. I found a lovely new Italian place on Rush Street that just opened. Why don't we all go there? We can have a nice lunch and talk this out properly. Your father and I miss you so much. The old hook, the manipulation, the attempt to move the battle from his office, his territory, to hers. I looked at the email. I read the words, dreadfully formal, and nice lunch. I remembered Naomi's words. You are a boring, gray rock. I deleted the email. I did not reply. The countdown had begun. My silence was a vacuum. I had sent the email, and in return, I had received only one attempt at redirection. My non-response to Vivian's nice Italian lunch created a void, and on Tuesday morning, 48 hours before the scheduled meeting, the Mallory family rushed to fill it with toxic, familiar static. The attack didn't come to my new, sterile number. It came to the old one. I had kept the phone, my old iPhone, powered on and plugged in on my desk, the ringer silenced. It was no longer a communication device. It was an evidence-gathering machine. It lit up just after 9 a.m., a missed call from Vivian. A minute later, a voicemail icon appeared. I didn't listen to it immediately. I put on a pot of coffee, drank a glass of water, and sat at my desk. My evidence file open. I hit play on the speaker. Vivian's voice, thick with practiced tears, filled the quiet room. Olivia, darling, it's Mommy. I don't understand what's happening. This is some kind of terrible mistake. Your father is... He's just so worried. We're worried. We just want to see you. We just want to talk to our daughter again. This coldness. This isn't you. Please, just call me. We can fix this. Whatever it is. I love you. The pleading. Step 1 of the script. The phone lit up again before the first message was even fully transcribed. A new voicemail. I hit play. The tears were gone, replaced by the voice of the martyr. It's me, again. I am sitting here, trying to understand how you could be so cruel. After everything I've done for you, the sacrifices I made, I gave you everything. I gave you your life, Olivia, and this is how you repay me by bringing in lawyers, by trying to tear this family apart. Paige is a wreck. She can't even look at her wedding dress. Do you know what you've done? Do you even care? The guilt trip. Step 2, a third call, a third voicemail. This one arrived a bare 30 seconds later. I hit play. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. The mommy was gone. The martyr was gone. This was Vivian. I don't know who you think you are. Her voice was a low, acidic hiss. But you are making the biggest mistake of your life. Your father is a very respected man. You think you can just do this? You think you can just throw us away? You are a part of this family, and you will do your duty. You will stop this disgusting performance. If you go through with this, if you try to humiliate us, you will not have a family to come back to. You will be alone, forever. Is that what you want? The threat. Step 3. I saved all 3 audio files. Vivian VM 1, P3, Vivian VM 2, 3, Vivian VM 3, 3. I emailed them to Cole with the subject line, Tuesday AM escalation. His reply was simple. Keep them coming. This is the predictable panic. They're realizing the old levers don't work. The old levers were failing. So they reached for a new one, a bigger one. An email alert popped up on my laptop. It wasn't to my new, secure address. It was to my work email, my Kestrel Ridge Analytics email. My blood turned to ice. This was a line I hadn't anticipated. The email was from Gregory. The subject line. A word of advice about your career. My hands were shaking as I clicked it. Olivia, your actions are not only damaging this family, they are threatening to damage your own hard-won reputation. I have many friends, many of whom are in your industry. Some of them sit on boards. Some of them are clients of your firm. It would be a terrible shame for word to get out that you are an unstable, vindictive, and disloyal person who attacks her own family over money. These things, they get around. A reputation is a fragile thing. I've spent a lifetime building mine. Think very, very carefully about what you are doing. Think about your career, your father. This was not a father. This was a mob boss. The implication was clear. Call off your lawyer, or I will destroy your livelihood. I felt the primal, childish urge to delete it, to erase the threat, to pretend it hadn't happened. Instead, I took a deep breath. I clicked File, Save As, but first, I clicked View Source. I found the originating IP address. I found the email server headers. I copied all of it, the raw, ugly code, and pasted it into a new text document. I saved the email. I saved the header data. I forwarded all of it to Cole's private server. Everything is data. The attack was now coming from multiple fronts. My old phone, silent on the desk, lit up with a text. It was from a number I recognized. Bennett Cross. Page's spineless. Resource-draining fiancé. Bennett Olivia. I'm trying to be the bigger man here. Page is devastated. That villa is gone. What you need to understand is that securing her wedding day is your responsibility as her older sister. You need to make this right with her. Today, my responsibility. I thought of Naomi's words. You are a gray rock. You are boring. I picked up the phone. I typed one word. No. I hit send. I then blocked his number. The rock, it turned out, felt good. The next wave was broader. Aunt Iris called my new phone that afternoon. Her voice was sharp with a kind of grim humor. Well, honey, the tribunal is in session, she said. What are you talking about? The Mallory Side Cousins Facebook group. Your mother's cousin, Cheryl, the one with the bad veneers from Florida. She's the prosecuting attorney. She's posted a long message about a family in crisis and a beloved daughter who has fallen under a dark influence. It's a full-blown family court, and you've been tried and convicted of elderly abuse and wedding destruction. My God, I whispered. They're campaigning. They're not just campaigning. They're poisoning the well, Iris said. Don't worry. I've been taking screenshots. High resolution. I'll email you the whole sorted file. You'll love the part where your Uncle Mark offers to fly up to Chicago and talk some sense into you. It's all just so pathetic. She was right. It was pathetic. And it was all evidence of a coordinated campaign of harassment. I told her to send the file to Cole. That evening, I got a text from Caleb. Can I come over? Just me. He arrived an hour later, looking gaunt and exhausted. He and Marina had clearly been fighting not with each other, but with the world. He wouldn't come inside my apartment, just stood in the hallway. I'm not on their side. Liv, he said, his voice low and miserable. I need you to know that. I know, Caleb, your text. It meant everything. He looked down at his shoes. They tried to get me to do it, too. Do what? The loans. About a year ago, after your bonus came in, the one you used to pay off their condo, they said you were tapped out for a bit, and they needed help. They asked me to take out a loan in my name, to help you. They said you were struggling and were too proud to ask. What? The lie was so audacious, so twisted, it took my breath away. I knew it was bullshit, Caleb said, his voice cracking. I knew you weren't struggling. I knew it was for them. I told them no. Marina and I had a huge fight with them. That's when they really started freezing us out, cutting us off. Caleb, I'm so sorry. No, he said, looking up, his eyes hard. I'm sorry. I should have told you. I didn't want to be the one to light the match. But, Liv, it's worse. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It wasn't new. It was old. The creases soft. Marina found this. It was in a box of old tax returns. It's from 3 years ago, right after you got your promotion at Kestrel. Look at it. He handed me the paper. It was Vivian's handwriting. Her looping, elegant, expensive script. It was a list. It was a script. At the top, it said Livy, call strategy, Q3. Bonus. It had bullet points. Start with guilt. Page's student loans. Dad's stress. Pivot to investment. It's for the family. We all benefit if she objects. Don't you love us? If she agrees. You're a lifesaver. Darling, we're so proud. Goal 15K. This wasn't just a letter. This was a battle plan, a playbook for manipulation. I sent a high-resolution scan to Cole. His call came 10 minutes later. All the gravel was gone from his voice. It was replaced by the cold, sharp excitement of a surgeon who has just found the tumor. This is it, Ms. Long, he said. This is the whole case. This isn't impulsive. This isn't a moment of weakness. This is a long-term, calculated, premeditated conspiracy to defraud. That script just turned family dispute into organized criminal enterprise. The DA is going to eat this with a spoon. The next night, Wednesday, the night before the meeting, I was running a bath, trying to force the tension out of my shoulders, when my new phone rang. It was Miguel, the night shift doorman. Ms. Long, he is back? Mr. Mallory. My heart stopped. Is he in the lobby? Yes, ma'am. He's not right. He's been drinking. He's demanding to be let up. I've told him I can't. And he's threatening me. Ma'am. Miguel, call 911. Right now. Tell them a trespasser is threatening building staff. Do not engage with him. I'll be right down. No, ma'am. Please, don't come down. The police are the right call. I'm filing a formal incident report with building security. I heard a crash in the background. A vase. I'm calling now. Ms. Long, just stay in your apartment. The line went dead. I sat on my sofa in the dark, my heart pounding a hole in my chest. 15 minutes later, my phone rang again. It was Miguel. He's gone. Ms. Long. The police. They escorted him out. He left before they could. But they have his name. We have it all on camera. I'm so sorry. Are you okay, Miguel? I'm fine. But, Ms. Long, the camera, the audio, it's very clear. He was shouting. What did he say? Miguel. He kept shouting at the elevator camera. He said, "This is my building. I paid for this. You owe me. Olivia, you owe me." Pure gold. I asked him to send the file to my new email and to CC Cole Whitaker. Amidst the shrapnel, a small green shoot of hope, an email from Ruth Danvers. Subject update. Just a heads up, the fraud alerts and the credit freeze are working. I just pulled your reports. Your TransUnion score has already ticked up 12 points. The system is purging the fraudulent inquiries. We're on our way. A 12-point jump. It was a start. A sign that the ship was, however slowly, turning. My final call of the night was to Naomi. I feel, I said, my voice hollow, like I'm in a war. You are, Naomi said, her voice a calm, steady line. You're fighting for your sovereignty. And you're winning, but you need an anchor. The meeting tomorrow. It's the final battle. They will throw everything at you. The tears, the rage, the guilt. You need a shield. I have Cole. Cole is your sword. You need a shield for your mind. I want you to write down your boundary, your non-negotiable truth, not for them, for you. A statement you can look at, hold on to remind you why you're there. One sentence that cuts through their noise. I hung up. I pulled a small, thick card from my desk. I took my favorite pen, a heavy, black rollerball. I thought about the last 7 years, the money, the manipulation, the script, the threat to my career. The the $60,000 of debt. I thought about Gregory, drunk in my lobby, screaming, "You owe me." I wrote one sentence on the card: "A moral debt does not permit a criminal act." I looked at the words. They were clean. They were true. I opened the black accordion file. It was now almost 6 inches thick. I clipped the small card to the very front page. It was my calming charm, my shield. I closed the file. I was ready for Thursday. The morning after Gregory's drunken performance in my lobby was a Tuesday. The air was cold, and the sky was a flat, unforgiving gray, the color of wet concrete. It was the perfect backdrop for what we were about to do. Cole did not meet me at his office. He met me on the steps of the Chicago Police Department's 18th District Station. He was wearing a dark charcoal overcoat and held 2 cups of scalding hot, black coffee from a bodega. He handed one to me. It was bitter, and it was exactly what I needed. "This is the last step you can't take back," he said, his voice a low rumble in the morning traffic. "You walk in there. You are no longer just a daughter. You are a complainant. You are the victim of a felony, and you are officially pointing the finger at the perpetrators." "They pointed first," I said, the steam from the coffee cup warming my face. "They pointed at my name, my credit, my future. They've been doing it for years." He nodded once, a sharp, approving gesture. "Good. Let's go." We were not shuffled to a desk. Cole's reputation preceded him, and his call to the district attorney's office the day before had greased the wheels. We were shown into a small, fluorescent-lit room with a detective named O'Malley, a man whose entire demeanor suggested he had seen it all and was deeply tired of it. Then Cole began to talk. He didn't present a frantic victim. He presented a case. He laid out the black accordion file on the table, and the detective, who had been leaning back in his chair, slowly leaned forward. Cole presented the fraudulent credit applications, the IP logs that traced back to Gregory's Comcast account, the affidavit from my Aunt Iris, and the security footage of Gregory threatening me in my lobby. When he played the audio of Gregory screaming, "You owe me," O'Malley's eyebrows disappeared into his hairline. When he showed him Vivian's handwritten call strategy script, O'Malley stopped looking at us and started typing. I told my story. I was concise, factual, and analytical. I was the person I was at work. I gave him the timeline, the amounts, and the clear-cut fraud. 2 hours later, we walked back out into the gray morning. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. It was the adrenaline of the final severance. In my new, secure email inbox was a message from Cole, sent from his phone. It contained a scanned copy of the official report. At the top, in a black, stamped box, was the weapon we needed: CPD, case number 72944A19. "The board is set," Cole said, hailing a cab. "Now, we send the opening move." Back in the paper-filled fortress of his office, he drafted the demand letter. It was the single most brutal, elegant, and terrifying document I had ever read. It was not a letter from a daughter. It was a legal instrument. It was addressed to Gregory Mallory and Vivian Mallory, and it was sent via certified mail. Signature required. "I've also emailed it to their known addresses," Cole said, clicking his mouse. "They can't claim they didn't see it." The language was cold, precise, and lethal. It informed them that a formal criminal complaint for identity theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy to defraud had been filed with the Chicago Police Department, case number cited. It informed them that a comprehensive file had been opened with the Cook County District Attorney. Then came the offer. "It's not an offer," Cole corrected me, as if reading my thoughts. "It is a choice, a binary. There is no negotiation." The terms were simple. They were, in exchange for my conditional agreement to inform the district attorney that full and immediate restitution has been made, and that I, as the victim, was not seeking carceral punishment, to agree to 2 non-negotiable items: 1, full restitution of the $60,000 in fraudulent debt; 2, their signature on a binding, permanent probationary agreement which included a strict no-contact order, barring them from communicating with me, visiting my home, or visiting my place of work. This, Cole said, tapping his monitor, is the checkmate, the appendix. He had attached a separate document, a real estate agreement. It stipulated that the $60,000 was not to be paid back by them because, as Cole had rightly assumed, they didn't have it. The money was already gone. Instead, the agreement mandated the immediate listing and sale of their West Briar condo. How does that work? I asked, seeing the trap closing. It works, Cole said, a rare, grim smile on his face. Through escrow, they will not see a dime. The agreement, which they will sign, directs the title company to pay the $60,000 directly from the proceeds of the sale into an escrow account, which I will control. That account will then pay off the lenders, the credit companies, and the credit union. The debt is vaporized. Their asset, the one you paid for, becomes your salvation. The final line of the letter was the clock. They have 5 business days to sign and return the enclosed documents. If they are not in my possession by 5 p.m. on Monday, November 10th, this choice is rescinded. Plan B, he said. Is that the full file, including the conspiracy evidence from your brother, goes to the DA, and I personally notify the credit agencies that my client is the victim of an active, uncooperative felony, and we will pursue all remedies. The letter was sent. The clock was ticking. Now the rest of the board began to move. Aunt Iris called, her voice electric. The realtor just left their building. She's a friend of mine. She said the place is a showcase. Marble floors, Wolf appliances, silk wallpaper, looks like a damn magazine. She said Gregory let her in, looking like a ghost, and just pointed, didn't say a word. She's running the comps. She says they're sitting on at least $200,000 in equity. Equity I had funded. The irony was acidic. Ruth Danvers emailed me a new PDF, ORL Recovery Plan V1.pdf. This isn't just about the debt. Olivia, she had written in the email, this is about your future. I've mapped out a new 5-year plan. Once that $60,000 is off your books, your credit score will rebound. But we're going to make it stronger. We're going to set up new, firewalled accounts. We are going to build your escape fund into a thrive fund. This is your blueprint for a life where you answer to no one. I printed it. It felt like a deed to a new property. Then, the final pieces of evidence arrived from Caleb. He came to my building and left an envelope with Miguel. Inside was a handwritten letter. It wasn't just a witness statement. It was a confession. He detailed the retirement plan comment from my 19th birthday. He detailed the constant, crushing pressure, the way every family conversation, every holiday, was reverse-engineered to see how much could be extracted from me. He wrote of the guilt, the shame, and the fear he had lived with, watching them bleed his sister dry. Attached to it, on a separate sheet, was a printout. Marina, my sister-in-law, had found the texts, the ones from the group chat, the ones Caleb had screenshotted, where Vivian had directed the fake heart palpitation script. Cole received the new file. We're not just ready, he said over the phone. We're armed to the teeth. He set the meeting. Thursday morning, 10 a.m. The day after the demand letter was signed for. They'll be there, he said. They're terrified. They're cornered. They'll come. He was specific. No lunch, no coffee, no pleasantries. My conference room, there will be water, a legal pad, and silence. This is not a family discussion. This is a surrender. That night, I prepared myself. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, the way I had when I was practicing how to say no. Now, I practiced a new sentence. I will not argue. I said it out loud. I will not argue. They would come in with tears, or rage, or pleading. They would try to drag me back into the old script. I would not be dragged. I was a rock. I was a complainant. I will not argue. I went to my desk. I opened a clean white 9x12 envelope. I took the file Miguel had sent me, the security footage from the lobby, I had gone to a print shop and had 3 still images from the video printed in high gloss, 8 by 10. The first, Gregory's face, distorted with rage, yelling at the camera. The second, his hand, shoving the embossed note under my door. The third, a crystal-clear shot of the note itself. The words, "You owe us. Fix this," glaringly clear. I slipped all 3 photos into the envelope. I did not seal it. It was my trump card, resting on the table, face down. I sat on my sofa and looked at my watch, a simple, elegant piece I had bought for myself with my first bonus. I adjusted the time, syncing it to the atomic clock on my phone. Cole had said 10 a.m. We would not start at 10:01. We would not start at 9:59. The rest of my life had been dictated by their chaotic, demanding schedule. This new life would run on my time. I sat in the dark of Cole's outer office at 9:30 the next morning, having let myself in with a code he'd given me. The conference room was ready. It was a long table of dark, polished wood. On one side, 3 chairs. On the other, 2. At the head of the table, at Cole's spot, sat a single object. It was a Mont Blanc fountain pen, not a flashy, gold-plated one, but a simple, black, utilitarian model with a steel nib. It was not a status symbol. It was a tool. It was the object that would sign the papers, the object of endings. I sat in my designated chair. I placed the white envelope in front of me. I pulled out my new phone. I opened the voice memo app. Illinois is a 2-party consent state for recording, but a conference room in a legal proceeding is a different matter, and Cole had advised me this was my right. But this wasn't for him. This was for me. I needed to hear it. I hit the red record button. I set the phone on the table, screen down. I smoothed my gray wool skirt. I watched the door, and I waited for 10 a.m. That night, the city outside my windows was a silent, glittering map of a life I had not yet allowed myself to live. The meeting with Cole was scheduled for 10 a.m. I had just over 12 hours. I was in my kitchen. The air, for the first time in a week, was not thick with the metallic taste of adrenaline or the bitter residue of old rage. It was just quiet. I was making soup, not a complicated, performative meal for a crowd, but a simple, almost ascetic pot of broth, lentils, and vegetables. It was a ritual of self-care, a conscious act of providing for myself. For 7 years, my kitchen had been a place of sacrifice, cooking for dinner parties I paid for, chilling bottles of champagne for their celebrations. Tonight, I was just feeding myself. The rhythmic chop of the carrot against the cutting board was a kind of meditation. On my small dining table, open to the first page, was a leather-bound notebook. It was not the black accordion file of evidence. This one was a deep, hopeful blue. The title on the first page, written 2 years ago, was Project Sanctuary. My plan to buy my own apartment, a 1-bedroom condo in a building with no doorman, no shared lobby, a place with a deed that had only my name on it. For years, it had been a fantasy, a place to channel the anger. Now, it was a plan. The lights from the city, the towers on the other side of the river, reflected on the open page, illuminating the goal. My old phone, the evidence phone, lay dark on the counter. My new phone, the Fortress, vibrated once. A text, from Paige. It wasn't a wall of accusations. It was just a picture, a high-resolution image, professionally taken. It was her, in the wedding dress, the one she'd supposedly been unable to look at. She was standing in a bridal salon, surrounded by mirrors, and she looked, I had to admit, beautiful. The dress was a cascade of lace and silk. Beneath the image, one line of text. "This is the dream you are setting on fire. I hope you're happy." I looked at the picture. I saw the girl I had grown up with, the sister I had once protected from scraped knees and bad dreams, and then I saw the woman she had become, a willing participant in the system, a junior partner in the firm of Mallory. The old Olivia would have shattered. The guilt would have been a physical force, a hand closing around my throat. I would have called her, weeping, and the checkbook would have come out. I set my phone down. I tasted the soup. It needed salt. I picked the phone back up. I saved the image. I saved the text. I created a new subfolder in my evidence drive. I named it Emotional Manipulation. I moved the file. Then I went into my settings and muted Paige's contact. I did not block her. Muting was enough. It was a conscious choice to lower the volume on her pain, a pain she was using as a weapon. I took my soup to the sofa and dialed Naomi's number. She picked up, her voice warm and steady. "Olivia, the night before." "The night before," I agreed. Spooning the soup, it was warm, it was good. "How is your body?" she asked. She never asked, "How are you feeling?" She always asked about the physical. "I'm not shaking," I said, and I was surprised to realize it was true. The tremor that had lived in my hands for a week was gone. "I'm not dizzy. I'm just clear." "Good," she said. "What changed?" I looked out the window, at the grid of lights. I think I was terrified when I was walking in the dark. I knew something was chasing me, but I didn't know what it was. Now, I see the whole map. I see where all the traps are. I see the path out. It's not a dark forest anymore. It's just a map. "Because you see the map," she affirmed. "You're not a victim running from a monster. You're a cartographer. And you're leaving the territory. Remember that tomorrow, when they try to pull you back into the trees, you stay on the path. You hold the map." "I will," I said. "Thank you, Naomi." "You don't need to thank me. Olivia, you're the one walking." We hung up. I finished my soup. The quiet in the apartment was a living thing. My phone buzzed again. This time, Caleb. "Caleb Liv. I hope this isn't a bad time. I needed to tell you. They're trying to rent an apartment, a high-rise in Lincoln Park. They got denied." My stomach tightened. "What?" I typed. "Caleb?" "The application. They don't have the income to cover it without you, and they don't have the credit. They needed a massive deposit. They tried to get me to co-sign. He, too, was now a target. The primary ATM was offline, so they were scrambling, hitting the backup accounts. Caleb, I told them no. I wanted you to know. They're already trying to find their next move. This isn't just about the 60,000. This is about their entire lifestyle. They're desperate." "Me. Are you okay, Caleb?" "I will be. Marina and I are fine. You finish this. Please. For both of us." I looked at his message. I saw the address he had forwarded from them. A 27th floor apartment with panoramic views. I thought about calling them. About what? What would I even say? I realized I had no idea. I opened a new note on my phone. I typed, "Call Caleb and Marina. Check in. After." I closed the note. I put the phone on its charger, on the other side of the room. I was done with incoming data for the night. I went to my stereo. I had an old record player, a comfort from college. I put on a record, a comfortable, smoky old jazz album. The sound of a saxophone, familiar and smooth, filled the room. I listened for 3 notes. It felt wrong. It was a sound from the past. It was the background music for the sufferer's uniform, for the long nights I'd spent working to pay for their lives. It was a distraction. I walked back and lifted the needle. The music stopped, cut off mid-note. The silence that rushed in to replace it was better. It was pure. It was not an absence of sound. It was the presence of my own thoughts. I would go into this battle clear-headed, with no soundtrack but my own breathing. I accepted the silence as my final ally. I walked into my bedroom. I opened my closet. I laid out my armor. It was not a power suit. It was not aggressive, or sharp, or designed to intimidate. It was neutral. A simple, perfectly ironed white silk blouse, a pair of well-tailored, charcoal gray wool trousers, a pair of low-heeled, black leather loafers. Simple, solid, built for walking away. There would be no statement jewelry, just my simple watch. My hair would be pulled back into a severe, clean knot. I was not dressing to be a daughter. I was not dressing to be a victim. I was not dressing to be a warrior. I was dressing to be a witness, a complainant, a professional in the business of her own life. I went into the bathroom and washed my face. I looked at the woman in the mirror. Her eyes were tired, but they were no longer afraid. I went back to my desk. I picked up the small, thick card where I had written my one true sentence. A moral debt does not permit a criminal act. I folded it once, cleanly, and slid it into the pocket of the gray trousers. It would be there tomorrow, a small, square, hard piece of truth against my skin. I walked to the window. My apartment, the one I had paid for, was on the 14th floor. I pushed the window open a few inches. The Chicago wind, cold and smelling of the lake and exhaust, cut into the warm room. I welcomed it. For years, I had kept the windows shut, burning scented candles. Joe Malone, Diptyque, the expensive ones they always borrowed. I was always trying to cover up the smell of the rot, always trying to make the air more pleasant, to mask the truth, no more. I let the raw, cold, real air fill my lungs. It was sharp, and it was clean. I closed my eyes, and I rehearsed. I pictured the long, polished table in Cole's conference room. I pictured the 2 empty chairs on the other side. I pictured Gregory walking in, his face a mask of blustering rage. I pictured Vivian, her hand on her pearls, her eyes scanning for a weakness. I pictured my own hands, resting on the table. Still, I pictured my breathing, slow and even. I pictured the tears, the accusations, the pleading, the threats, and I pictured myself, saying nothing, a rock, a map. I pictured the pen, the steel nib, the paper. I opened my eyes. The city was still there. The plan was still there. I was still here. I walked to my bed. I pulled back the covers. I whispered one last thing to the quiet, empty room, my final, private vow. No one else gets to write my future for me, ever again. I turned off the light. The night was profoundly, completely quiet, but the story was just about to turn its final page. 9:57 a.m. The air in Cole Whitaker's conference room was cold. It was a still, refrigerated cold, maintained by an aggressive HVAC system that hummed a low, monotonous drone. There was no coffee. There were no pastries. On the long, dark, polished wood table, there were 3 glasses of water, already filmed with condensation, and a single, black, hard-bound accordion file. It sat in front of Cole, who was at the head of the table. I sat to his right. The 2 chairs on his left, and the 3 chairs across from me, were empty. My eyes were on the file. The white-typed label on its thick spine was simple, stark, and final. Mallory case. I had arrived at 9:30. Cole was already there, in the same charcoal suit, his gaze already fixed on the door. We had not spoken. There was nothing left to say. The strategy was set. The map was drawn. Now, we just had to watch the other players walk into the traps we had laid. My own hands were resting, one on top of the other, on the cool wood. Beside them sat the plain white envelope I had prepared. Inside it, the high-gloss photographs waited. My breathing was slow. I was a rock. I was a map. I was a complainant. The digital clock on the credenza flicked from 9:59 to 10 a.m. The sound of the heavy office door opening from the reception area was loud in the silence. It was followed by the clicking of heels on the marble tile floor, and a deeper, heavier tread. The conference room door, a slab of solid wood and frosted glass, swung open. Gregory and Vivian Mallory walked in. They were not dressed for a surrender. They were dressed for a takeover. Gregory wore his best dark blue, pinstriped vest, a suit of armor he usually reserved for closing deals or intimidating new members at the club. His hair was perfectly combed. He smelled of expensive, sharp cologne. He looked at the room, at Cole at the head, at me on the side, and his face tightened. He was annoyed by the seating arrangement. Vivian was a masterpiece of calculated vulnerability. She wore a cream-colored cashmere suit, a string of heavy, luminous pearls at her throat. Her diamond bracelet flashed. Her hair was perfectly coiffed. She held a large, expensive leather handbag in front of her body like a shield. Her face was composed into a mask of brave, tragic maternal suffering. They stood in the doorway, expecting one of us to rise, to offer a seat, to break the tension with a social nicety. Cole and I remained seated. After a long, 5-second silence, Cole gestured with an open palm toward the empty chairs across from me. "Please sit." Gregory strode forward and took the chair directly opposite Cole. Vivian, with a small, theatrical sigh, took the one next to him. They were a united front. Gregory placed his hands on the table. He leaned forward, ignoring Cole, his eyes fixed on me. He was still trying to be the chairman of this board. "Olivia," he began, his voice a low, commanding rumble. "This has gone on long enough. This entire charade. It is inappropriate, and frankly, it is embarrassing." I said nothing. I kept my gaze neutral. "You've had your little tantrum," he continued, the condescension dripping from every word. "You've made your point. Now it's time to end it. We are your family. We are going to sit here, as a family, and you are going to apologize to your mother for the stress you've caused her." His demand hung in the refrigerated air. An apology. He was still operating under the old rules. He believed he still held the gavel. Cole Whitaker did not sigh. He did not lean forward. He simply lifted his right hand and tapped a single forefinger on a small, black digital object on the table. Just to the left of the Mallory case file, a small red light was glowing. "Just for your awareness, Mr. Mallory," Cole's gravelly voice cut through the tension. "We are on the record. Everything said in this room is being formally recorded as part of this proceeding." Gregory's tirade stopped in his throat. His eyes snapped from me to the small, black recorder. He looked at it as if it were a snake. The word proceeding had struck him like a slap. This was not a family matter. Vivian saw her husband's tactic fail, and so, the tag team began. It was her turn. She let out a shaky breath. Her perfectly manicured hand, the one with the diamond bracelet, went to her pearls. She pressed her fingers against her chest. "Oh, Gregory," she whispered, her voice frail. I feel quite faint. The air in here, it's so... I'm having one of my palpitations. Olivia. Darling. My heart." She was performing. This was the fake heart palpitation script. Live and in person. She was looking at me, her eyes wide, pleading, expecting me to crumble, to rush for water, to call off the lawyers, to revert to the role of caregiver. I did not look at her. I did not acknowledge the performance. My gaze remained fixed on the black spine of the file in front of Cole. Mallory case. It was more real to me, more solid, than the woman performing her own tired script across the table. I was a rock. My failure to react was a more profound rejection than any words. Vivian's face, for a split second, flashed from frail to furious. She had been denied her audience. Cole, seeing the first 2 volleys had been neutralized, decided it was time for the opening move. His hand went to the file. He untied the black ribbon, opened the cover. He did not speak. He took the first document from the top. He slid it, slowly, across the polished wood. The paper whispered. It spun 180 degrees and came to a perfect, gentle stop in front of Gregory. Gregory looked down. I knew what it was. It was the cover page from the police report. He saw the Chicago Police Department logo at the top. He saw the bold, black, stamped words, complainant report, identity theft, fraud, and he saw the case number, CPD, case number 72944A19. He saw the date, the time, and the signature of the detective. Gregory's face, which had been pale with anger, began to turn a deep, mottled red. The color started at his starched collar and climbed, pulsing, up his neck, flooding his cheeks, his self-control, his expensive veneer, cracked and shattered in a single, silent moment. He looked up from the paper, not at Cole, but at me. His voice, when it came out, was a strangled whisper. You went to the police." He slammed his palm on the table, and the water glasses jumped. "You are sending your parents to prison." The question hung in the air. The final, desperate, guilt-based weapon. I met his gaze. My heart was pounding, but my voice was not. I had practiced for this. I was not a daughter. I was a complainant. My voice was flat. It was even. It was a stranger's voice. "I am clearing my name." The words, so simple and so devoid of the emotion he expected, hit him harder than a shout. He was speechless. Now, Vivian began to truly unravel. The police report was one thing. That was abstract. That was paper. I picked up the white envelope in front of me. I did not give it to Cole. This was mine. I slid it across the table, past the police report, and it stopped in front of Vivian. She looked at it, confused. Her palpitations were miraculously gone. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice sharp. "Evidence," I said. Gregory, his hands shaking with rage, grabbed the envelope. He tore it open. The 3 high-gloss, 8x10 photographs spilled out. He looked down. We all saw them. The first, his own face, a grotesque mask of rage, illuminated by the fluorescent lights of my lobby, shouting at the camera. The second, his hand, shoving the embossed Mallory stationery under my door. The third, a crystal-clear, close-up shot of the note itself, the thick, cream-colored paper, the jagged, furious handwriting. "You owe us. Fix this." Gregory stared at his own words, written in a drunken, undeniable scrawl. Vivian stared at the pictures. She stared at the note, and she broke. This was not the practiced, theatrical weeping from her voicemails. This was not the delicate, maternal suffering from 5 minutes ago. This was a dry, gasping, ugly sob, a sound of pure, panicked horror. This was the sound of a woman who had been caught not just in a lie, but in a low, cheap, common crime. The photos, the note, they were not helping, they were not family, they were evidence of a shakedown. The illusion of their superiority, their class, their entitlement, had just been vaporized by a flashbulb in a lobby. She put her head in her hands, her pearls clattering against the wood, and she wept. They were real tears. Cole let the silence stretch, filled only by Vivian's ragged sobs. He let them sit with the images. He let them understand that the play was over. Finally, he spoke. His voice was calm. It was the voice of a man setting the terms of a surrender. "Here is the situation," he said, and both of them, even Vivian, quieted. "A felony has been committed. $60,000 of fraudulent debt was opened in Ms. Long's name. We have the IP logs. We have the witness affidavit from Ms. Iris Finch." Vivian's head shot up at that, her eyes wide with betrayal. "And we have the evidence of harassment you see on the table. The district attorney's office is, as you can imagine, very interested." He leaned forward. "However, Ms. Long is not seeking to send her parents to jail." A flicker of hope in Gregory's eyes. "She is seeking restitution and freedom." Cole slid the next document from the file. This one was thick. A settlement offer. "The offer is this," Cole said. "You will agree to the full and immediate restitution of the $60,000. In return, Ms. Long will sign a declaration for the DA, stating that full restitution has been made and that she advocates for a probationary sentence, not jail time." Gregory was still staring at the photos. He was processing. "And how?" Gregory said, his voice a low growl. "Do you expect us to pay that? We told you, that villa. We... You will pay," Cole said, "by agreeing to the conditions in Appendix A." He turned to the last page of the settlement. "This is a binding real estate agreement. You will agree to the immediate listing of your condominium at West Briar. The $60,000 in restitution will be paid directly from the proceeds of the sale, through escrow, to the lenders. The debt will be cleared. The money will not pass through your hands." The finality of it, the cold, mechanical stripping of their primary asset, the home I had paid the down payment for. Gregory stared at him, and then he did the only thing he had left. He laughed. It was a dry, hollow, rattling sound, a bluff. "This is absurd," he scoffed, trying to regain his footing. "We don't have $60,000. The market is down. That money is gone. You can't get blood from a stone. Whitaker." He was still trying to bargain. He still thought he had a card to play. Cole did not argue. He did not raise his voice. He simply, patiently, turned the page. There, on top of the file, was a new document. "According to the market," Cole said, his voice flat. "You're quite wrong." He slid the paper across the table. It was not a legal document. It was a full, detailed, multi-page comparative market analysis and appraisal, completed yesterday by a realtor from Berkshire Hathaway. It was filled with glossy, color photographs of their pristine, magazine-ready interior, the marble floors, the Wolf appliances, the silk wallpaper, and at the bottom, on the final page, in a large, bold font, was the current appraisal value, and a suggested listing price that was more than enough to cover the debt. Attached to it was a proposed listing schedule. Photos on Monday, open house on Saturday. The room temperature plummeted. Gregory's laugh died in his throat. His mouth hung open. He stared at the pictures of his own home, packaged and ready for sale. Vivian's sobs stopped. She was staring, slack-jawed, at the number. They had no cards left. They had no bluffs. They had no family drama to perform. There was only the file. There was only the recorder. And there was only the pen, sitting at the head of the table, waiting. The checkmate was on the board. Now, all that was left was for them to knock over their king. The room was a vacuum, and the only sound was the high, thin hiss of the HVAC system and the ragged, drying sobs from my mother. Vivian had her head in her hands, her pearl-encrusted fingers pressing into her temples. Gregory was frozen, his gaze locked on the glossy photographs of his own home, packaged for a quick sale. The appraisal, the last piece of paper, sat on top of the pile like an obituary. Then, slowly, Vivian lifted her head. She didn't look at her husband. She didn't look at the papers. She looked at me. It was not the look of a mother. It was not the look of an adversary. It was a look of pure, blank, chilling recognition. She was seeing me, maybe for the first time, not as an extension of herself, not as a function, not as her retirement plan, but as a separate sovereign entity, a stranger who had just, with cold, surgical precision, dismantled her entire life. In her eyes, I saw what she now saw. I was not her daughter. I was the complainant, and she was, finally, afraid of me. Gregory was not afraid. He was a cornered animal, and he would use his last, blunt weapon, the art of the deal, the desperate, grasping negotiation of a man with no leverage. He cleared his throat, a dry, rasping sound. He pushed the damning photos of himself aside, as if clearing them from his mind. He looked at Cole, businessman to businessman. "An installment plan," he said, his voice a hoarse attempt at its old boardroom confidence. "The 60,000, we can't. The house is, it's not liquid. We'll pay it back. 1,000 a month. We'll set up a payment plan." He was still trying to frame it as a loan, as a family arrangement, as something he controlled. Cole Whitaker didn't even blink. He didn't consult a note. He just shook his head, a single, sharp, negative gesture. "No," he said. The word was flat. "There is no installment plan. There is no payback. There is restitution. And it will be, as the document states, a direct escrow. The debt is paid by the asset. You will not touch the money. That is the offer. It is the only offer." "But," Gregory stammered, his mask of control disintegrating, That's our home." "That is your choice," I said, my voice, quiet and steady, cut through his. Both of them looked at me. I felt in the pocket of my gray trousers. My fingers found the small, folded, hard-edged card. My shield. I pulled it out. I did not look at it for reassurance. I placed it on the table in front of me. I unfolded it once. I was not reading it for myself. I was reading it for the record. I looked at both of them, my gaze moving from my father's collapsing rage to my mother's terrified, strategic tears. "I have one thing to say," I said. My voice was low, and it did not shake. "And I am only going to say it once." I read the words I had written. "A moral debt." My voice was clear in the cold room. "Does not permit a criminal act." I let the sentence hang in the air. A moral debt, the one they had hammered into me since birth. The "you owe us." I had just named it, and I had just neutralized it. Gregory's face was blank. He didn't understand. It was too abstract. But Vivian understood. She flinched, as if I had thrown something, and she played her last card, the one she had held in reserve her entire life, the Queen of Hearts, covered in blood. A criminal act," she whispered, the tears welling up again, this time with a new, wounded nobility. "A criminal act. Is that what you call it? All my sacrifices, the nights I stayed up, the things I gave up for you, the very life I gave you. You call motherhood a criminal act." It was a brilliant performance. The room was heavy with the stench of her sacred, maternal guilt. Gregory looked at her, then at me, a "see what you've done" expression on his face. I said nothing. I just looked at Cole. Cole held my gaze for a second. Then he nodded. "Speaking of sacrifices, Mrs. Mallory," Cole said, his voice a gravelly monotone. He reached into the black accordion file. He pulled out a single, stapled document. "You mentioned your sacrifices. Your sister, Ms. Iris Finch, submitted a statement about a sacrifice you were willing to make." Vivian's blood drained from her face. The name Iris hit her like a physical blow. Cole slid the new document onto the pile, right on top of the real estate appraisal. "This," Cole said, tapping the paper, "is a legally sworn affidavit. In it, Ms. Finch testifies under penalty of perjury that she personally witnessed you, on Easter Sunday, 4 years ago, in your kitchen, providing your daughter's social security number over the phone to a car dealership to secure a loan for your other daughter, Paige, because, and this is her direct quote, "Olivia won't mind. She pays for everything." It was silent, utterly. The HVAC drone was the loudest thing in the universe. Vivian was staring at the affidavit. Her mouth was open. Her hand, the one with the bracelet, was frozen in the air, halfway to her pearls. The script, the sacred text of her motherhood, had just been ripped to shreds by her own sister. There was no defense. There was no comeback. There was only the black and white, notarized truth. Gregory stared at me. His gaze was not angry anymore. It was not negotiating. It was hollow. He was looking at me, the daughter who had been his retirement plan, the useless ATM, and he was finally, truly, seeing the end of the line. All his old weapons, the bluster, the guilt, the intimidation, the paternal authority, they were all broken. They were just pieces of scrap metal on the polished table. He had nothing left. And in that moment of profound, echoing silence, I felt a vibration. It was not my phone. It was the phone, the new one, the clean one. It was in my purse, on the floor. A single, silent buzz. I didn't reach for it. I didn't look, but I knew. I knew it was Caleb. It was the pillar, the small, the quiet text. "You're doing the right thing." A tiny square of light, as he'd said, in the palm of my hand, a reminder that I was not, in fact, destroying a family. I was just exposing one. I remembered Naomi's voice, in the quiet of her office. "Do not explain. Do not justify. Do not argue. You are not there to win a fight. You are there to close a file." I looked at my parents. They were broken. They were perpetrators. They were, finally, at the end of their script. I gave them the gray rock, I gave them the choice. This is your choice, I said, my voice quiet. It is not mine. You are the ones who took the loans. You are the ones who wrote the note. You are the ones who came to my home. This is just the consequence. It is your choice. The clock on the credenza. I could hear the second hand, a tiny, electric click, 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 the pressure of time, the pressure of the choice. Cole let the silence hang for one more click. Then, he reached for the pen, the black Mont Blanc, the object of endings. He did not hold it out. He did not offer it. He placed his hand on it, and with a single, deliberate movement, he pushed it across the table. It slid, smooth and silent, over the wood, a dark dividing line. It crossed the center, into their territory, and came to a stop directly between Gregory and Vivian. A small, final, terrible object. Gregory stared at the pen as if it were a loaded gun. He looked at Vivian. Vivian, her face a mask of ruined, tear-streaked makeup, was not looking at him. She was looking at her own reflection, a warped, ghostly image of herself, in the side of her untouched glass of water. She was watching a stranger weep. The drone of the air conditioner filled my ears. It sounded, I thought, like the flat line of a heart monitor, the steady, mechanical sound of a power that had just died. Cole Whitaker leaned forward. He had not raised his voice once. He did not raise it now. He spoke two, simple, binary words. Sign, he said, his voice a low, final command. Or we go to trial. The pen sat. The papers waited. Gregory's hand, shaking, began to move. My heart was a fist in my chest. The scene held, frozen, like a photograph. The pen, the hand, the silence. The meeting had been a detonation. The days that followed were the aftershock. The air thick with the dust of a collapsed dynasty. The agreement was made. The terms set. The 5-day clock for the final signatures ticking. The war was over. Now, it was just the grim, necessary logistics of the surrender. The first reports came from the front lines of the social battlefield, relayed by my new, unexpected ally. He's a wreck, Olivia, Aunt Iris's smoky voice crackled over my new, clean phone. The realtor, my friend, Cheryl, she went over yesterday to take the listing photos. And I asked, sitting at my desk, my own apartment silent around me. And she said the place was like a tomb, that magnificent, magazine-ready condo you paid for. It was dark. Vivian had all the curtains drawn. Gregory, he just pointed at things, wouldn't speak. Cheryl's photographer, a professional, had to ask him to please move out of the shot. He was just standing in the middle of the living room, staring at the fireplace, pathetic. They're moving forward, though, I stated. It wasn't a question. Oh, honey, they don't have a choice. Iris laughed, a dry, harsh sound. The listing went live 3 hours ago. Cheryl's phone has already blown up. It's priced to move, just like your lawyer demanded. The showing schedule is already packed for this weekend. She paused, and I could hear the clink of ice in her glass. The best part, Vivian's little click from the club. They've started. The concerned texts. Viv, darling, I saw the listing. Are you? Downsizing. And, my personal favorite, from that awful woman, Barbara. Are you and Greg finally making the move to Florida? The humiliation is public. Olivia, it's done. The social implosion was mirrored in the smaller, more immediate family unit. The following afternoon, a text from Caleb. It wasn't supportive this time, just a field report. Caleb Bennett's mother called Paige. She advised they postpone sending out the wedding invitations. Not cancel, just postpone, until the family unpleasantness is resolved. A minute later, another text. Caleb Paige is not good. She's blaming Bennett. She's blaming Mom. She's blaming Dad. She's blaming everyone. I think she's too scared to blame you anymore. I read the text, and I felt nothing, not satisfaction, not pity, just a profound, hollow quiet. The shrapnel from my explosion had hit everyone, but I had been standing at ground zero. I was the only one who had built a shelter. I closed the text conversation and opened an Excel file on my laptop. It was my old friend, Project Sanctuary, XLSX, my budget, my dream. I clicked on the cell labeled Down Payment Savings. For 7 years, this cell had been a frustration, a number that grew by inches and was then decimated by emergencies. I went to the line item labeled Mallory Family Support. The formula in that cell was simple. EO, sum of transfers. The total was a sickening 6-figure number. I highlighted the entire row. I hit the delete key. The row vanished, and in my down payment projection, the final sum, the one that calculated my 5-year plan, suddenly shifted. The cell turned from a cautious, conditional yellow to a bright, solid, beautiful green. I was not just solvent, I was free. The system, once purged of its virus, began to heal itself at a remarkable rate. An email came in from Ruth Danvers, my financial advisor. Subject impressive. Credit report update. Olivia, I've never seen one move this fast. That CPD case number wasn't a request. It was a key. I've been on the phone with the fraud departments at all 3 bureaus. They are not just processing your claim. They have expedited it. The $60,000 fraudulent debt is already in pending deletion status. They're just waiting for the final, signed restitution agreement from your lawyer to wipe it from the books permanently. She continued, I pulled your FICO this morning. Just from the freeze and the removal of the hard inquiries, your score has already jumped 31 points. 31. In a week. The machine works. Olivia, you just had to clear the jam. I closed the email and, for the first time in my adult life, I looked at my own financial future not with dread, but with analytical, excited curiosity. The old world, however, had one last, grasping, pathetic attempt to pull me back. My new phone rang. It was an unknown number, a local Chicago area code I didn't recognize. My heart gave a single, hard thump of old fear. I let it ring 3 times. Then, I answered. I was the gray rock. Hello? A pause. Then, a voice I barely recognized. It was thin, wheedling, stripped of all its boardroom confidence. Livy, Gregory. It's Dad. I said nothing. The silence on the line was heavy, thick. Livy, please. I know. I know we're signing. We're doing it. The house. We're doing it. I waited. It's just, your mother. We found a place. A small place. A rental. In Lincoln Park. We had to put down a deposit. A large one. To hold it. He was rambling. The words tumbling out. Desperate and disorganized. They won't give it back. Livy. The application. It didn't go through. Our credit is. They said we were denied. They won't refund the deposit. It's $5,000. Livy, $5,000. We just need, if you could just help us get the deposit back. He was begging. The man who had called me a useless ATM, who had smashed a vase in my lobby, who had threatened my career, was begging me, from a borrowed, strange phone, for $5,000, for a deposit on an apartment he couldn't have. I remembered Caleb's text. I remembered the 27th floor apartment. I took a breath, and I hung up. I did not say no. I did not argue. I did not justify. I just ceased to be there. I disconnected the line. I blocked the number. The aftershocks were not just in my old life. They were in the extended family. Marina, Caleb's wife, sent me a text that night. Marina, FYI, your parents have been calling everyone. Uncle Mark, your cousin Cheryl from Florida, everyone. They're trying to borrow money. For the rental deposit. For their transition. I felt a small spark of apprehension. Me. Are they having any luck? Marina, no. Not a cent. It seems Aunt Iris wasn't the only one who saw the show. No one wants to be associated with them. No one wants to get on your bad side. They're radioactive. Olivia. They're completely, totally on their own. They were alone. It was a terrible, tragic, and entirely necessary consequence. That night, I woke up, 3 a.m., the classic hour of panic. I lay in the dark. My heart, steady. I was awake, but the familiar, cold dread, the adrenaline-fueled racing of a heart anticipating an attack, was gone. I waited for it. It did not come. My body had, finally, gotten the memo. The threat was over. I lay in the dark, and I practiced the breathing Naomi had taught me. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. I was not doing it to calm a panic. I was doing it to enjoy the peace. The final pieces of the puzzle clicked into place the next day. A new email from Iris. Subject: another one for the pile. Found this in my 2019 sent folder. Right after I told Vivian I wouldn't pretend to be broke to guilt trip you. She was not pleased. I think your lawyer will enjoy the part where she calls you her most reliable asset. Good God. See you in hell. Mallory's. I opened the attached email. It was a long, vitriolic, and stunningly clear piece of evidence. Vivian, in her own words, directing the conspiracy, it proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that this was not a recent desperation. This was a practice, a long-term, calculated strategy. I forwarded it to Cole. My phone rang. My new one. Not even 60 seconds later, I heard a sound I had never, ever heard before. Cole Whitaker was laughing. It was a short, dry, humorless bark. "Oh, Ms. Long," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. This is just, it's piling on. This is what we call a pattern and practice. This is the kind of thing the DA frames. It's beautiful. They're not just signing. You know, they're going to be grateful they get to sign. He took a breath. Checkmate is approaching. Olivia, the final documents are prepared. The closing agent is on standby. It's time to end this. That evening, I was making a simple dinner. The quiet in my apartment was, by now, a comfortable friend. My old phone, the evidence phone, lit up on the counter. A text. From Paige. I almost ignored it. It was a picture. A single, blurry, poorly lit photo of a bottle of wine, sitting in the fluorescent-lit aisle of a Jewel Osco. It was a $15 bottle of Cabernet, a cheap, jammy, awful wine. The text that followed it was just 3 words. Remember this one? I stared at the picture. I remembered it. It was the wine we drank in her dorm room when I was at Northwestern and she was a freshman. The wine we drank when we were just sisters. Before I was an analyst. Before I was an ATM. Before she was a fiancé demanding a 16th century villa. It was a clumsy, pathetic, $15 attempt at an apology, a desperate, fumbling reach back in time, to a person she had helped destroy. I felt a sharp, sudden, unexpected sting behind my eyes, a flicker of something, grief. Then, I thought about the handwritten script. If she objects, don't you love us? The grief hardened. It became the boundary. Forgiveness is a right. It is not an obligation. I put the old phone back on its charger, face down. I did not reply. I walked to my desk. I sat down. I took out my planner and looked at the next day, Thursday. I set an alarm on my new phone. 7 a.m. I labeled it Sign Final Documents. The black accordion file, the one labeled Evidence, was now in a box in the back of my closet. On my desk, in its place, was a new, thin manila folder. Cole had couriered it over. The label, typed and clean, was Escrow Instructions, Mallory Sale. It contained the final, binding settlement, the death warrant for my old life, the birth certificate for my new one. I looked out the window. It was almost morning. The first, pale gray light of dawn was breaking over the lake, turning the dark sky a cold, clean blue. The clouds were thin, high, and white, like fresh sheets of paper waiting to be signed. I drank my coffee. I put on the gray wool trousers. I put on the white silk blouse. I walked out of my apartment, into the hallway, and pressed the button for the elevator. The scene was set. The door to the conference room was about to open. One last time. Gregory and Vivian arrived 2 minutes late. It was 10:02 by the clock on the credenza. A deliberate, petty power play, their last, flickering attempt to make the world wait for them. Cole and I sat in the refrigerated silence of the conference room, just as we had before. We had not spoken. We were simply waiting. The heavy door swung open. No knock. Gregory entered first. He was not the same man. The pinstriped suit of armor was gone. He wore a rumpled tweed sport coat that hung on his frame. He was unshaven, his eyes networked with red. He looked diminished. Vivian was a ghost in his wake. She was not the tragic, pearl-draped performer of the first meeting. She was simply empty. Her face was pale, puffy, and swollen from days of crying. She wore no jewelry, just a simple, dark sweater. They walked not to the head of the table, but to the 2 chairs directly across from me, the designated seats for the defendants. They sat down heavily, a pair of exhausted, defeated ghosts. Cole did not waste time on greetings. He did not ask why they were late. He was a machine executing a function. "You have had the required time to review the settlement offer." His voice was a low rumble, devoid of any emotion. "We are here today for one of 2 outcomes, a signature or a refusal." His hands, large and steady, went to the 2 thin black-bound files in front of him. "This," he said, sliding the first file into the dead center of the polished table, "is Stack A, the settlement agreement, which includes the terms of restitution and the binding real estate escrow instructions. You sign this. The process begins." He then took the second, identical file and placed it exactly 1 inch to its right. "This," he said, "is Stack B, the formal notice to the Cook County District Attorney, rescinding our request for a probationary sentence and releasing our entire file, the affidavits, the conspiracy charges, the police report for immediate and aggressive prosecution." He looked from Gregory to Vivian. "You sign A, and I file it. You refuse, or you try to speak, and I file B. The choice is binary. You may proceed." The 2 files sat there, stark and black against the dark wood. Surrender or annihilation. Vivian could not look at them. She stared at her own hands, twisting them in her lap. Gregory, however, had one last ember burning. He looked at the files, then at me. His lip curled, a last, pathetic attempt at a snarl. He was searching for his old power, for any weapon he had left. He found the oldest, rustiest one. "We raised you," he whispered. The words were thick, heavy with a lifetime of implied debt. After everything, his voice gained a thin, reedy strength. "The roof over your head, the food in your mouth, we gave you your life, and this is how you repay us. You sit there, cold as ice, and do this." It was the final invoice, the foundational bill of his fatherhood. I had waited for this. I had rehearsed for this. I looked at him, the man in the rumpled tweed, and I felt nothing. The account was closed. I leaned forward, just an inch. My gaze did not waver. "That's enough." My voice was not loud. It was not angry. It was the sound of a steel door closing, its tumblers falling into place. It was the sound of done. Gregory flinched. He had expected me to weep, to argue, to defend myself. He had not expected me to simply dismiss him. I kept my gaze steady. I looked from his stunned, bloodshot eyes to Vivian's bowed head. I owed them this one. Final explanation. "You want to talk about repayment," I said, my voice low and clear. "At Harrod and Pike, you called me a useless ATM. You were angry because the machine had, for the first time, denied a withdrawal." I saw a flicker of memory in Gregory's eyes. He remembered. "It was a good metaphor. Dad," I said, and the word dad sounded strange, like a word from a foreign language. "So let me be perfectly clear. For the record," I looked at Cole's small, red-lit recording device. The useless ATM from that night is no longer taking orders, and as of today, it is locking down, permanently. My hand went to the plain white envelope that I had brought to the first meeting, the one I hadn't even needed. I pulled out the 3 8x10, high-gloss photographs. I did not slide them. I did not throw them. I placed them on the table, one by one, a final, damning tarot spread. First, Gregory's face, purpled with rage, distorted, yelling at my lobby's security camera. Second, the close-up of his hand, the one that used to pat my head, shoving the embossed Mallory stationery under my door. And third, the note itself, the close-up of his own, jagged, furious handwriting. You owe us. Fix this. I tapped the third photograph. The machine is locked, I repeated, my voice a quiet hiss. And you, I looked directly into Gregory's eyes, are the one who gave me the keys. He stared at the pictures. He stared at his own words. You owe us, the phrase he had lived by. The core of his entitlement was now just a piece of evidence in a felony case. Vivian finally looked up, her swollen eyes, blurred and unfocused, slowly sharpened. She saw the pictures. She saw my face. She saw the cold, clear, analytical stranger sitting across from her. And she knew the game was over. She knew the plays were gone. She understood, in that moment, that this was not a family fight. This was a legal execution. A small, dry, rattling sigh escaped her. It was the sound of a complete and total surrender. Her shoulders slumped. She looked down at her hands, and she was done. Gregory was still staring at his own hatred, immortalized in ink. Cole, sensing the kill, moved in. He picked up the cover sheet from Stack B. He held it up. Chicago Police Department, he read, his voice slow and booming, like a judge's gavel. Case number 72944A18, complainant Olivia Long, defendants Gregory Mallory, Vivian Mallory, charges identity theft, conspiracy to... Stop. Gregory's voice was a shredded, broken whisper. He looked at the pen, the simple, black, steel-nibbed Mont Blanc, still sitting where he had left it. His hand, I watched his hand, the hand that had held a leash. It trembled. A violent, uncontrollable tremor. He reached for the pen. His fingers, slick with sweat, fumbled. He grasped it. He held it like a weapon, but his knuckles were white with fear. Cole slid. Stack A, the settlement, into the space in front of him. Sign, Cole said, his voice flat. He pointed to the signatory line. Gregory squeezed his eyes shut. A single, hot, angry tear rolled down his unshaven cheek. He was a king, dethroned. Gregory, Vivian's voice was a croak. Sign it. Just sign it. His eyes snapped open. He looked at her, then at me. A look of pure, undiluted, bottomless hatred. The steel nib of the pen tore at the paper. A scratching, violent sound. Gregory Mallory. It was not a signature. It was a scar. He threw the pen down. It rolled, stopping in front of his wife. Vivian did not hesitate. She picked it up. Her hand was shaking so badly that the single pearl button on her dark sweater vibrated against the table as she leaned forward. Vivian Mallory. It was done. Cole said nothing. He gathered the signed pages. He inspected the signatures. He placed them in a fresh manila folder. He reached for a large metal binder clip. He clamped it shut. The loud snap of the metal spring echoed in the cold. Silent room. It was the sound of a trap closing. The sound of a vault being sealed. The sound of a life being filed away. The agreement is binding and irrevocable, Cole stated. My office will file it with the court and the title company. The realtor will contact you for the final transfer of keys. We are concluded here. You may go. There was no, I'm sorry. There was no, Olivia, please. They just stood. Two gray, hollowed-out people. They did not look at me. They turned, and like ghosts, they shuffled out of the conference room, leaving the photographs, the half-empty water glasses, and the wreckage of their lives behind them. The door clicked shut. I let out a breath I felt I had been holding for 7 years. I stood up. My legs were perfectly steady. On the table in front of me was the small, folded card from my pocket, my boundary. I picked it up. I folded it, one last time, and slid it into my pocket. Mission complete. I nodded to Cole. He nodded back. A grim professional acknowledgement. I turned and walked out of the dark, paper-filled office, out of the conference room, and into the building's main corridor. The hallway was a wall of floor-to-ceiling glass. The November sun was high, and it streamed in, a sudden, blinding torrent of pure golden light. I had to stop. Lifting a hand to shield my eyes, I stood there, blinking, letting the warmth of it hit my face, and in my pocket, my phone vibrated. My new phone, my clean phone. I pulled it out. A text message from Ruth Danvers. Ruth. It's done. The first lender just received the wire from Cole's escrow account. Capital One debt, $15,000. Status, paid in full, deleted. Congratulations. Olivia, you're clean. I read the words. Paid in full, deleted, clean. I looked out at the bright, open sky. My father's words at the restaurant, his casual, cruel insult, had been the spark. He had asked me how it felt to be a useless ATM. That insult had become the police report. It had become the affidavit. It had become the legal, shimmering blade I had just used to sever the thick, choking, 5-year rope around my neck. As I stood in the sunlight, I felt it fall away. It made no sound. It just released. It was the quietest, most profound, and most beautiful sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of freedom. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We'd love to know. Where in the world are you listening from? Let us know in the comments so we can connect. And please share your thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button to help this story be heard by more people.